Okay, welcome back, folks. My name is Art Walaszek, and I am the co-core leader of the OR Core, the Outreach, Recruitment, and Engagement Core at the ADRC, and also work with a terrific public health team at the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute. So I'm delighted to kind of take us into the next phase of our day here today, and very, very honored to introduce our last speaker of the day. So this is Ms. Gina Green-Harris. Is she already getting applause just with the name? Just wait till you hear the accolades. She is the director of the UW School of Medicine and Public Health Center for Community Engagement and Health Partnerships in Milwaukee, as well as director of the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute Regional Milwaukee office. And on top of all that, the co-director of the Just Research program. She has expertise in the areas of health equity, diversity and inclusion, cultural competency, leadership development, and research. She's received many awards, lots of recognition, including a 2019 to 20 UW-Madison Outstanding Woman of Color Award. In September 2020, she was appointed to chair the Governor's Health Equity Council. And on top of all that, she's working on her doctorate. So she is a doctoral candidate at UW-Madison in the ICTR Clinical Investigation Program and a Center for Health Disparities Research trainee. And I'll just say I've learned a tremendous amount from Gina over the years and tremendously value her friendship and collegiality and teaching me about community engagement. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation, and welcome Ms. Gina Green-Harris.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. It's not like you guys had a heavy lunch. So it's my pleasure to be here. I want to thank Dr. Bendlin for inviting me and the team for asking me to speak today. I have a few minutes and I'm going to talk about creating sustainable community partnerships in research. So there we go. And so here we go. This is me. This is what we're going to talk about. And we're going to, as you see, as Art said, this is who I am and it describes me. But who am I for real? I'm really just a person who wants to make sure that we have strong community engaged relationships with community so that all of the work you heard about today can actually be applied in communities in a very healthy, palatable way that we can really make a difference as we study this disease called Alzheimer's and other related dementias. So with that, I noticed there's a delay in this little thing. Is it me or is it the clicker? Or is it tired because it's 2:30? Which one? Just want to acknowledge the team at the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute and the Center for Community Engagement and Health Partnerships. This is our team. So you can do no work. No man is an island. And so when you hear me talk about this work, these are the folks who are actually helping us to get the work done. So what are we talking about? Community engagement here today. And why are we talking about community engagement and thinking about how we build communities? When we think about the work that we've done over several years, we think about the work culture, we think about people, and we think about processes. And I submit to you today that what I want us to talk about and think about is how do we rethink the way we're doing business? How are we communicating our relationship with community? And what does that really mean as we continue to do all of this study, all of the studies we do, and not just research, but even just thinking about our academic work? How are we engaging people in a way in which they are really valued at their gifts, at their talent, and at their treasures? And not just coming to sit in our machines for us, right? But no one does that at UW, so I'm really kind of talking to the church here, or preaching to the choir. Is that how they say it? Whichever one. But we're going to talk a little bit about why are we talking about communities in the first place. How many of you guys remember the Belmont Report? And the Belmont Report, that's good. You can put your hand up. The students put their hands up. So professors, you're doing a great job. But we talk about the Belmont Report, and we think about the good science, good ethics, right? But beneficence. All of that is important when we're thinking about the inclusion of community. But when Quinn and all talked about in about 2004, they actually thought about community was really important and the voice of community was important, but we wanted to make sure we had respect for communities. And what we're talking about is thinking in the terms of equality and equity in community. And what we're thinking and talking about is making sure that when we're engaging community, we're not just looking at what they can offer us, but what is it that we should be offering them. We also think about Wilkins, who talks about trustworthiness. Not is the community trusting us, but how are we making sure we're not just being performatory and we're performing things to talk about what we want to do, but we're sincere and genuine in our actions that the community actually trusts us. So those are things that we want to talk about today. And then we talk about how long have we been thinking about engaging communities from all walks of life? How long, or I shouldn't ask this question because it's too late in the day, but I will anyway. So how many of you guys remember this mandate and the report and the act from the Revitalization Act of 1993? Anybody remember that? Well, that was over 30 years ago, and that's where it was mandated to have women and minorities in research. I would submit to you today that we still ask the same question: where are we at with our recruitment, our engagement, our inclusionary practices? So this is why we talk about community today. And so when we think about community, what is community? What does that really mean? And oftentimes when we think about community and when we're talking about community, we talk about this defined geographical or political area, right? We think about community in these broad senses and these broad terms. And then we talk about the population that possesses common characteristics. Does this sound familiar in any of your writing when you're writing about what is a community? But we also have to recognize the community is an entity that functions in society, but outside of our research institution, meaning it has its hub, it has its relationships, it has its partnerships. And for some, community is a block by block thing. Community can be a zip code area. Community can be a group of setting of people who have experience in a specific area that has nothing to do with the next block or the next neighborhood. I live in an urban city called Milwaukee. Many of you might know it's about 300 miles from here. But the reality is that in our community, we are block by block. You ask us where we live. We'll say a street name. We'll say a block name. We don't always say Milwaukee. That's community for us. And then what I want you to think about, though, is when you're doing your science, when you're doing your work, how do you express community in your work? Do you just group people based on what is your criteria, your inclusion, exclusion criteria? How are you thinking about community? And then is there a difference, and I asked this question, between community member and stakeholder? Now there's been some conversation about this. Many folks think stakeholders are people who are actually paying contributors to research. Those are stakeholders. And community members are lay people who are non-scientific, who may not be able to contribute financially. But I submit to you today that your stakeholders are actually the people who you have in your studies, because they are also the people who are your liaisons, who are the people who are making your studies work, who are helping you actually continue to be refunded, who are helping you to make sure that the community trusts you and are building these relationships that are sustainable over time. So something to think about that. And I do have the word lay community in here. And oftentimes I put that in the presentation because when we think of lay, we do think of non-professional. We think of all the nons of a person. But what I submit is just because I'm inexperienced in what you're experienced in and makes me call me a lay person, it doesn't mean that I do not have added value. Our communities have equal added value just as we do. And so I want us to think about that because oftentimes it influences our work. For example, we think about communities that are of different race, of ethnicities, and they cannot do something. They do not have the same bandwidth as other communities, urban versus rural, race, gender. Think about that and how we use those terms sometimes and weaponize those communities unintentionally. We really need to think about what language we're using and how we're treating people that we call community. And so this is our community outreach model that we've been using for the last 16 years in Milwaukee. It's an asset-based model. And basically what this model says is that the community has value. The community is actually helping us to drive our work, and the community makes the difference in what we do. The community brings us assets. It has strengths. It has qualities. It has resources that you and I and our research team may not have thought of or may not have thought it is something of value. So for example, we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, but when we think about how our communities have been surviving, have been thriving, even with Alzheimer's and dementia as a high disease, a disease of prevalence in the community, they are still making ways to keep their loved ones safe at home. They are still finding ways to develop strategies that they can use to really build on the level of confidence of caring for their loved one, even without paid resources, even without sustainable resources in healthcare settings. And so we have to think about the communities bringing us assets. And so we engage with community, we build relationship, we get involved, and then we have a commitment from community, not just for research, but for educating us and helping us to build our relationships. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, of course, this is Minkler's famous model of principles of community engagement. Now, I can't go over all of them, and true enough, I have no glasses on, so I can't see any of them. So let's just be transparent today. And so, but I do want to talk about building on the strength and resources in community. One of the things that we have to challenge ourselves with as investigators, as researchers and research teams is recognizing that there are strengths in the community that we don't understand and we don't know about, and they can look very different than what we're used to working with. So for example, when we think about one of the things we did early on in our work, and we continue to do, is talk about the healthcare model with our community. And we were always trying to say to the community, we need to talk about Alzheimer's, we need to talk about dementia. And they were like, we don't want to call it that. We want to talk about brain health. We want to talk about the positivity. We want to talk about resilience. We want to understand how can we beat these things. And then when we talk about diabetes, everyone's not being amputated. And they talk about that. But that's a strength of the community. What do you mean by that, Gina? The community actually has knowledge. The community actually has resources, and they actually have answers. And so we have to think about when we're engaging with community, we can't just go to community for the purpose of saying, hey, we're tired, it's time to do research. We really need to understand what is it that the community is doing and doing well. Does that make sense to everyone? I can't see you. So I just need to hear you or something. So that's just one key principle, but we empower community. We talk about research for action with mutual benefit, which I'll talk about really shortly in the next slide or two. And then this co-learning and capacity. It's real capacity building. Co-learning is really something that's important. We have to go into community with a mindset that we don't know everything. Now, I know that is total oxymoron to what we're taught and what we are said to believe, and to the doctors in the room, to all of the scientists in the room. I'm not saying you're not as smart as you are, but what I am saying is there's another type of knowledge that the community has, and we have to co-learn with them. And we also have to understand and appreciate that knowledge that they're giving us and sharing with us is really important, so we can actually build this reciprocity kind of activity with the community. And so what do we do when we think about this community engaged research? So there's different types of community engagement. I'm going to talk about two. I'm talking about these two because these are the popular ones that most familiar ones to people. I shouldn't use popular. I'm not in the community, but they like that word. So I'm in this room. I'll say the most used type of research. The first one is limited community engagement. That's community engaged research, where we're engaging the community in research, but we're not asking them to partner with us from start to finish. That would be the second one, where we're actually having equal partnerships from start to finish. Well, before we develop an idea, before we develop any type of activities, the community is involved, community-based participatory research. And then community engaged research is we may have some research already, but we want to get feedback. I would vouch to say majority of people are doing community engaged research, but some of them are calling it community-based participatory research. Want to know what exactly you're doing with community. Why? Because when we're going and engaging community, we need to make sure we're asking for the right thing and we're building the right type of partnerships. And so this is an actual picture from the Governor's Health Equity Council from 2022. And what we talked about was, how does the community want to contribute? We actually talked about research and what would it look like. And here's some interesting things. You see the full list, but I highlighted a few. And this one is that the community talks about future generations, progress for improvement, responsibility, and purpose. Those are three things that the state of Wisconsin participants in this said was really priority for them in order to participate in what they wanted to contribute when it came to doing research. And then the other side, which is how do you think about equity? And think about this. It's investment in the community, investment in people, investment in programs, investment in service delivery models, opportunities and access, making sure that everyone is included, making sure no matter how, if you've got a disability, where geographically you're located, your age, your gender, all of that was really important to them. How many people are in your family, it did not matter. They wanted to make sure that was happening. And then this multifaceted interconnectivity, meaning they really wanted to see across sectors joining. They didn't want a lot of silo type of research that is done. They wanted to start thinking about, how do we include everyone that is also going to be impacted by our research. And then in the middle, this middle ground here. Representation is really important at the table. Bring us in, ask us what we want, find out what we really need as our primary and our priorities. Thinking about shifting power and resources. Now that's really interesting, because even though we think we're inviting community into our spaces, oftentimes he who has the purse string holds the power. And what we do is we talk about the ability to work with community and the desire to work with community, but when the grant is gone, we're gone. And then the other thing we do is that we decide, this is what I want this activity to look like. This is what I want this community advisory board to look like. This is what I want this media or this campaign to look like. And we haven't involved community, and we want them to come. And then we also have perspective. Whose perspective are we doing our research from? Whose lens are we using? Community wants to be in those perspectives. And ownership. Ownership should not be based at the academic institution level. It should not be owned by the researcher. The research should be owned by everyone. Now, we've got responsibilities, and we know we have to have, PIs are responsible to the government, to the funding source. We know that. But the community, you have to have a commune kind of concept with this work that we're doing. And so is there a need for diversity? We did a study, Dr. Passmore and I, in company. It was quite a few folks on this grant. But we asked this question. Is diversity needed for our work? And what we found is that it's important. 87% of these were UW researchers, by the way, across our campus. 87% said yeah. And then, is it important in your work? it dropped to 38, almost 39%. Now, the question, Sue, we asked each other was, is this because people don't want to do research, or is it because people are not sure how to do the research? And we understand that, there's knowledges of best practices. Do people really know how to do this? And what we found is that there is some knowledge. People have knowledge of how to do this work, but the implementation was still low. And the interesting thing is that even those folks who are like 1 to 9 years in, I better not touch anything on this thing that I can't fix. So, but I'll say the earlier and the younger scientists still have knowledge, but the implementation was still low. So we know there's knowledge. That's not necessarily the problem. Implementation is still low. So we did interviews, and we wanted to understand, what are people saying? And so what this qualitative piece talked about was, what is it about why we're not doing this? And so here's some of the answers we got. I don't know the right way to do this. People are wanting a right way to do this work. And then it's kind of like there's just a lot of anxiety, doubt, uncertainty. So we recognize that it's not that I don't want to do it. I'm not quite sure how to do it. And so then we understood, there was another comment, that the perception is that there's not much we can do about it. So there's a sense of hopelessness when it comes to being inclusive in this work. And then, of course, there is some bias in that last one, where we talk about a certain group of people who doesn't have transportation and all of those things. Now, why is that important? So what we do know is that when we think about African Americans, that last comment, when we think about the perception and when we think about knowing there's a right way, these are really important findings for us. And this is how we actually thought about doing just research, because what we wanted to do was give researchers and their team opportunities to better understand how to actually engage with community and to be more inclusive in their work. I believe, and we believe, there's a desire, but we also understand there's sometimes just not an understanding of how to do that. And so what we want to emphasize here in this particular slide, what I'd like to emphasize is that it also means that we also have to have more inclusionary practices in our hiring, in our getting grad students, and our getting all of our team members, all of these things, because we can have these honest conversations about what's up here. If you are working with people who don't look like you, if you are building relationships with people who don't look like you, it's easier to then move forward with that. And so I'm almost at the end of my slide. So, all right, thank you, Dr. Bendlin. And so what we do know is, where do we go from here? So when we think about what we have learned and what we're learning in terms of understanding how to engage with community, how to build community, there has to be some actual intentionality about what we do. So these are from promises to practice, and these are how I believe we will engage authentically. The first thing that I have always asked people, and I continue to do so, is, what's your personal mission and vision statement for the work you do? What is your why? As a researcher, as a team member, as a human being who does this work, I need you to ask yourself, why am I here today? Why do I do this work? Why did I choose this path? And most people who answer this question, the answer is not because it was a lot of money. It's not because I really love the NIH. It's not because I think it's just, it's going to get me to my dream faculty and position. That's not why. It's usually because of something I saw as a child, something I experienced, a loved one had some type of disease, or something that sparked you that you saw. It was caring, it was kind, it was a real life situation. And when you go back to your roots of your why, then you're able to, in these difficult times, remember who, why, and what, and humanize our work again. It is wonderful that the work that we do, but we have to remember, at the end user is human. And then I think you, as an organization, what are the organizational goals that you've set? How has your organization decided to be inclusive? One of the slides I didn't show was where there was this group of folks who said, yeah, in my office, we talk about going and doing community engagement, and we all say, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And then we say, but we'll start here for now and we'll do it again next year, right? So we push things off. What is our organizational goals? And I will say this as well. Having a community advisory board is not the only way to engage the community. That is one way. It's a common practice now, but there are multiple ways to have community engagement. You can have community engagement like this t-shirt I'm wearing, right? I have had more people ask me about this t-shirt at the grocery store. We have had community engagement where we wear it as a team in our events that we staff. We also have community, this is all engaging people. And so you have to have some goals. And then I want you to learn about the community before, people say this all the time, before you enter the community, learn about the community. Don't just go to the community and ask for something, but have genuineness and integrity about who and why and what you're doing. And then trust the process, have authenticity, and be willing to be vulnerable. By that, I mean be willing to walk into a community and say, hey, I've never been here before, but I do value you. I care about you. I want to sit and learn from you and sit and be taught. And then have bi-directional partnership. Identify what are the priorities of the community, what are the priorities of your research, bring them together, and then share between back and forth and having equal say, equal conversations. No big I's, no little U's, but we're coming together for the sake of this work. And then finally, sustainability, needing you to have long-term goals. One of the biggest goals that we have at the WAI, to be honest, is that if ever we're not in a way to have grants or to be able to serve our community, our vision is that that community advisory board, that community work that we've done will be sustained. It will be able to continue. That's what you are striving for. Never leave a community worse off than when you came. Always leave it better. And then finally, just the thoughts to consider. I always bring it back home with rap, Dr. Sterling Johnson. And I love that because when we think about community, it is truly a community engagement story. When we started to do the RAP study in Milwaukee, we had very limited people. We had very few people. We had very few staff. But today in 2025, we have over 10 staff that are there now, and we are on the mark to get 200 new people. Even this next year enrolled in our RAP study, we went from less than 2% to now 22% African Americans in the RAP study. And we did it using all community engagement work. And then finally, I just want you to take those points with you. And if I don't have a lot of time, but I just want you to remember this one last one: set reasonable goals for projects, evaluate and assess your work and your strategies with community partners. And finally, recognize this is not a cookie cutter process. So this is my mantra that I use, and you'll see the backdrop is my grandmother, who is my why. My grandmother was my best friend. She died when I was 16. I committed to her that she advocated for me for as long as she could. And as she has passed away prematurely of cancer, I now advocate for others just like she did for me. So thank you for your time. Thank you for having me today. I hope I answered some questions, and I'm ready to take a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic, inspirational as always. I love these mantras. I love the one about don't quit in the middle. It's an opportunity to overcome an obstacle. So good words for these times, especially. So thank you. Okay, so let's open it up to questions. So if you've got a question, raise your hand and a mic will come to you, and we'll be monitoring questions online as well.
I'm the mic delivery person, but I want to ask a question.
Oh, there we go.
Miss Gina Green-Harris, can you explain your T-shirt for people that don't know?
Oh, sure. Yes. So we have a campaign, B1 and 200. As I said, it's a campaign. We are recruiting 200 African Americans into the RAP study. And so we wanted to after COVID, we fell off, but we wanted to come back and do something so that we can continue to grow the African American cohort in the RAP study. And so we came up with this campaign to be one of 200. And when you enroll in the study, you have a t-shirt that says, I am one of 200. So we knew our community, again, who doesn't want a t-shirt, who wants to know information. And when you think about it, 200 is a really small, it's important to us, but in the community of 1 million people, it's like, I want to be in that small group. What is that? What is that? And that's so amazing because the community constantly comes up. I'm telling you, in the grocery stores, what does that mean? What are you guys doing? How do I get to be a part? And then we talk about the RAP study, but we also talk about our other programs as well.
I love that Gina is actually wearing her research. That's a very cool thing about your work. What other questions do folks have? Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there are many folks here who are kind of involved in various aspects of learning how to be scientists and researchers and so on. For those who want to learn more about community engagement and community-based participatory research, what are some tips? What are some ways that folks can learn more about that?
Absolutely. So, I think the best way is to go into community, really start in community before you start your research, and understanding how communities are living, understand who's living there. If you have a specific target population, well, I will go sit, break bread, learn from them, understand how and their whys, and just really diving in from a human perspective. I think the other thing that we try to help folks do is to recognize that, and I didn't talk about biases today, but what are some of the reasons why you would not engage in a community? We talk about from a research perspective, what are your inclusion, exclusion criterias? How are you setting your marks when determining who's going to be in your research studies? Are you only looking at specific groups that have possible transportation? Are you only thinking about those issues? Think beyond the obvious. Think about innovative strategies and where you all can go to do that. So those are things that I would do, but I also think about myself. So can I tell a really quick story?
Please.
So I'm gonna tell a really quick, because I'm used to not getting questions because people are like, this is not what we do. We do science. This is not science, but it really is science because it helps your science. But here's my story. I know this person who has a bias against people who ride Kias, who drive Kias. And so every time they see a Kia, they just cringe. And so they're on the highway driving back and forth from Milwaukee to Madison. And every time they see a Kia, they really get upset. And because Kia's cut them off, or they do something really weird. And they think Kia owners have poor judgment, because who would buy a car that people can steal, right? So what I do is I think about this person, because when I come, and let's say that person comes and they're driving to their research appointment, let's say, and they're having a wonderful, lovely conversation with that person. And all of a sudden they find out that person drives a Kia. What does that do to that conversation now? How does that create an unseen, or now a new bias against that person? And would I include that person in my research study? Maybe not, because I don't think their judgment might be so well or so swell, right? So we think about bias in many ways, but think about where your biases is. By the way, that's not my bias anymore. I mean, that's not my bias. That's about another person. But the reality is, I tell that story because what I want you to think about as a researcher is, what's holding me back? What are the things that are inside of me that I already think about a population, about a community, that prohibits me from actually engaging them in my science? Because we actually do that. And so those are things that actually interrupt community engagement at times.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sterling.
Yeah, great job. Great talk. This is really informative to me personally. My question for you is, it feels like we're in a risky time right now. How is the community feeling, and what can we do as researchers to support them, and also to stay the course when there's so many other dynamics pulling on us, like hunkering down, not being too vocal about the certain words. How are we? What's
Yeah.
your advice in this critical time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Sterling. And I'll just answer it in a Gina way, which is the truthful way. I think I'm just going to be very honest. I think there's a couple things that are happening. I think the reality is in our community, we're used to this. This is something that our community has experienced over and over and over. And so when we talk to our participants, the questions are you guys going to be here? And so we say, we're working to the best of our ability to be here. We trust that we're going to do everything that we can. And they say, okay, we trust you, right? But they know, and they talk about it. We understand what's happening. We're used to what's happening. I think there are other community members who this is new for, and they're a little more shaky, a little more nervous, and are not sure how to ride the tide. And so we are riding the tide. And I think what we're doing, which we're doing well, is we are speaking out to the best of our ability. We can talk about the work that you've done, Sterling, that you've advocated, that the chancellor's advocating. We and the community appreciates that. So I don't think that from our perspective, people are saying, what you gonna do, what you gonna do? I think they're saying, how do we support you in this? Who should we be calling? Who do we talk to? And so that's the beautiful thing, by the way, of having a community relationship. We don't have to run to find people to come and advocate on our behalf. We have people coming to us saying, what can we do? And how should our voice be heard on this matter? Who do we write to? Who do we talk to? Who do we connect with? That's what's been happening in our neck of the woods.
Oh, okay, one more. Yep.
Talk. I'm always interested in sustainability of a project because, as you know, once the research ends, then we disappear. We researchers disappear. And given that we're not going to solve this problem in the current climate, one way may be that we actually write it in our grants, write it in our programs so that there is some type of sustainability after the research project ends. Do you have any other thoughts, or what are your ideas for that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's an excellent question. So since we started our project, excuse me, in 2008, we focused on sustainability from the start. And to answer your question, I think it's having diversified funds and revenue streams. I think it's not depending on one revenue source. So for example, the WAI Milwaukee office and WAI as well, we have multiple revenue streams. So we have funding from philanthropy, we have funding from donors, we have funding from NIH, but we always knew we had to have grant funding, right? So we're consistently looking for ways to identify strategies to always have these partnerships also with different institutions. We've got partnerships with Marquette, with UWM. We really made sure that we were just kind of no man is an island mentality and recognize we've got a shared partnership so that if we don't have funding, we could partner with MCW, Medical College of Wisconsin, to build a grant, to build an opportunity. And that's where we try to really connect because we recognize there is no one funding source that's ever going to be able to sustain programs. The other thing that we try to do is build community scientists, meaning we try to make sure the community is driving the science so that in the event that we're not there, they can actually go engage with another institution to get some science done as well and get work done. So those are things that we do. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
You can invite me again.
Okay, we are actually now going to do another raffle. So pull out your raffle tickets. And I am going to need some volunteers to do the raffle drawing for me. And I saw Dr. Zetterberg walked in, so invite Dr. Zetterberg to the stage. And then since we heard your name mentioned earlier, I'm going to invite Dr. Hartmouth Kolb to the stage, please, as well. And so these gentlemen are going to pull a minimum of 4 raffle tickets, but I suspect it might be more. So you're excluded from winning because you'll be pulling now.
It's not. Do we put one each?
Any first? Okay. Okay, I got it. So listen carefully. 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 5, 2. Anyone?
Oi, oi, oi.
Did we get a winner? All right, so please come to the stage and we'll ask you to state your name and your research lab or role, introduce yourself, and you are winning a mug today.
Thank you. My name is May McCarty, and I work in the Okonkwo lab. I work on as a program manager under the Clarity Grant for Alzheimer's research.
Thank you, May. All right, next winner. No, 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 we've got more prizes.
Okay, let's see. 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 2, 5. Hey. Oh, yes. Yes, please introduce yourself and describe research. Yes.
I will introduce myself. Hello, everybody. I'm Kayla Dillon. I am a PhD OTD dual degree student. OTD is Occupational Therapy Doctorate, if you're a little unfamiliar with that. I am in the Geriatric Health Services Research Lab with Dr. Beth Fields, and I study caregiving research and also physical activity and healthy aging. Thank you.
This was a cute water bottle.
I'm sorry.
This was a cute water bottle.
Perfect. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should we continue?
Are we done?
Yeah.
Oh, oh, this one is good. This one's the best number. This one's good. So listen carefully. 3, 4, 2, 3, 0, 0, 0.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a nice one.
Good,
Yeah.
yeah. Who has it? Who has it? Yeah.
Oi, oi, oi. Good, how are you? Good. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reed Olish. I am an associate professor in neurosurgery, and we focus on the epigenetic contributions of Alzheimer's disease. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, this is the last one. We have another beautiful brain book. So this is the big prize again.
This was a more complicated number. 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5. Not that complicated, but no. Ja. 3, 4, 2, 3, 0, 0, 9. Nej. Now it's Hartmut's turn, I think.
Lucky numbers. We try. Oh, this feels good.
Good luck.
This feels good.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. Again, 3, 4, 2, as always. 3, 0, 2, 2. Nothing.
Titta.
Oh, there. Okay. Oh, good.
This one is so nice. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Nice to meet you.
You just give a talk so we know who you are. But,
Oh, exactly.
it's a very, very good book.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Do I submit the ticket for the plane?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Are we done?
Are we done?
Thank you for being good sports. So we now have some additional celebrations. So Dr. Johnson and I will be announcing some awards. All right, the first award is for the best undergraduate student poster.
The award goes to Caitlin Miller.
So we'll ask you to come on stage, receive your award, and then wait on stage for awkward photos. Yeah, just wait there. We may or may not dismiss you, so just stay tuned. Okay, the next award is for Best Graduate Student or Research Specialist Poster.
Joanne Yee.
Is Joanne here?
Yeah, she's right there. Congratulations.
Okay, wonderful. Come on up, come on up. Congratulations. All right, the next award is for Best Fellow, Postdoc, or Research Scientist Poster.
And this one goes to Mingtong Liu.
All right, and now we are moving on to fan favorites. Thank you, everybody, for voting. So this is our first fan favorite poster award.
This one goes to Sarah Scalzo. While Sarah's coming up, she introduced herself earlier, but she, in her humble way, didn't say that she's going to med school very soon. She just got accepted.
All right, and then the second fan favorite, this is for lightning presentation, goes to...
This one goes to Yang Ye. Nice.
So, so this actually brings us to the close of our research day. I will just say that it has been really an amazing day. We had such outstanding keynote speakers as well as our lightning presenters, excellent posters, excellent raffle prize drawers all around. I also want to thank my co-host, Dr. Art Walaszek. And again, I want to thank all of the volunteers who made this day possible, who were involved in the extensive organization, our poster judges, our IT help, and again, Cheryl Spenceley. Thank you, everybody. And this morning, for those of you that were here, we heard a poem from Dr. Carter that really centered us and encouraged us to do our work. And she ended it by thanking everyone for their work in this field. And I want to end by thanking you all for your hard work and everything you do to address Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you.